Hey friends, Jessie here. My pronouns are she and they. If this is our first time doing yoga together, welcome to my little corner of the internet on our Yoga Vibe 585 YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk about vinyasa, um, which is a word that I think lots of people know but don't really know what it means. And um, I want to talk about the function of vinyasa in vinyasa style yoga, and specifically as we move on the mat, why sometimes we take a vinyasa is probably what you've heard teachers or myself say. Um, the word vinyasa in Sanskrit, one translation I really like that my teacher Amy Connors taught me was what comes in sequence or the next well placed thing. And you probably hear this term used when you talk about vinyasa flow style of yoga, which is a style of hatha yoga. Hatha yoga, ha and ta means sun and moon, and it's an umbrella term for modern postural yoga. So when we look at the system of yoga and how it came from India and in the ways that it spread, asana or poses are only one of the 8 or many ways that you can practice yoga, which the root of that word yuj means to join or yoke or bind. It means connect. So the idea of connection, whether it's to a higher power, to the universe, to your community, to your body, there are lots of ways to do that. The physical practice, just one of them. So, Hatha Yoga came out of that idea that there are different postures we can find ourselves in to connect better to our deepest, truest selves. From that, as yoga spread to the West, and there are like way smarter, more educated people than I who speak on this. So if this is interesting to you, me too. There's a ton of really smart, thoughtful people out there who are looking to decolonize this practice and talk about the roots of yoga in an honest and informative way. So definitely check that out if you want more. Um, but as yoga spread to the West, honestly, like white people, British white people, they wanted like exercise, which maybe you're not surprised to hear that that's sort of how that spread was through um, like British housewives who wanted to find ways to exercise their minds and bodies. And vinyasa style yoga um, is a style of yoga where the poses flow or move from one to the next. So, if you've ever gone to a yoga class that was not Iyengar or Bikram, or just a plain Hatha class where you hold postures for sometimes minutes at a time, or if you've gone to a yoga class that most of the class had down dog as like a home row, if you've done videos with me or Milo, um, that's vinyasa style yoga. There are tons of kinds of vinyasa style yoga. So it's not a monolith, right? It's not just one thing, it's more of a descriptive term. And the type of vinyasa hatha style yoga that my teachers taught me and shared with me, and that their teachers taught them and shared with them, um, comes through a spiritual system and not just a physical system. And there's both, there's lots of kinds of these practices. My teachers view physical alignment as a path to spiritual alignment. If you think about um, like a garden hose, that has water flowing through it and you get kinks in the hose, it's harder for the water to go through. So, the idea of moving our physical bodies is that we're unkinking the hose. We're getting a better flow, right, of energy, awareness, our own sensation and attunement to our bodies. And then we are better able to connect to ourselves, to our spiritual world. And that's pretty cool. I've studied with different people, different lineages and schools of thought, and one physical concept that is consistent that I'm going to share with us and focus on today is the idea that in any asana, in any yoga pose that we offer ourselves, we're looking to get our spines more neutral, more towards Tadasana, mountain pose, anatomical neutral. So, oh, wow. You ever sit on your feet for a long time and you don't notice they've gone numb until you move? That's me right now. Okay. So when I stand in Tadasana, mountain pose, anatomical neutral, my spine has natural curves to it. Yours does too. It's a feature of spines. If we start at our skull and go down our neck, this first curve is our cervical spine. It's a cervical curve. It moves forward towards like the front of our body. Then we have our thoracic spine around the rib cage, and the spine moves the opposite way. So it goes back away from us. Then we have our lumbar curve, our low back. It gently curves in. And then we have finally like our sacrum, our very lowest curve there, tucks, our tailbone tucks under and forward ever so slightly. So when we're just standing here, we're not doing a back bend or a forward fold. We are neutral. That's kind of where this comes into play. If I'm going to do a back bend, I'm going to engage the muscles on the back and the curves in the spine are going to extend. So I'm going to go back this way. And if I'm going to come forward, flexion, they go this way. So our different asanas have a combination of flexion and extension of the spine. They also have rotation, like this, moving side to side, and lateral flexion, so moving laterally, so side to side this way, rotating, extending, and flexing. You don't have to worry about that too much, but I like to lay the groundwork because that's what we're working with. So if I come into a twist, like a modified revolved lunge, even though I am in rotation, I'm in flexion of the hip, I'm still trying to get spinal extension and length. I'm trying to think about if I was working towards that neutral spine, how would my back and body move? And that's reducing it a little bit. That's a way I like to talk about it that's a little bit shorthand. I'm going to do my other side while I talk. Feel free to do these things as I do them, but we'll have lots to do in a little bit. I'm not trying to, sorry, plant. I'm not trying to overcomplicate it, more so offering some descriptive language for something that's already happening in our bodies. So a lot of times when people are moving through vinyasas, or chaturangas, or sun salute A, which are all things we're going to talk about today. Sometimes when they're moving through those, the body and the brain forget that we're looking for like that Tadasana spine, that more neutral spine, or flexion, extension, rotation, and lateral flexion mixed in. And the body kind of does a mishmash, but it's not an intentional mishmash. So before I get too ahead of myself and you lose interest, congratulations if you're still here, by the way. Let's come into downward facing dog. And I'm going to talk us into down dog in regards to our spine. So from hands and knees, we're going to stack our shoulders over the wrists. We're going to have our hips above the knees. And for a moment here, just let your spine kind of do whatever it wants. So you could sink it, you could arch it, you could do nothing at all. And from here, we're going to engage ever so slightly. So push down into the knuckles of your fingers, hug your arm bones together, and draw your belly button up towards your back. Think about Tadasana. So if you collapse your low back, it's actually not what we were doing when we were standing, right? That would be this. We just want that natural curve of the spine. From here, step your right foot back behind you. Reach your heel away from your head. Step your left foot back behind you. And then soften your knees to lift your hips. Reach your chest and shoulders back towards the tops of your thighs. And we found down dog. For the first few breaths here, do whatever you want. You can pedal out the feet. You can step them in closer. We'll talk about that in a minute. But for now, just stretch your legs. Warm up your wrists and fingers. Try to keep the weight going forward into the knuckles of your fingers as opposed to the heel of your hand. Couple of big breaths. Maybe shake out your head or wag your tail. From here, shift forward into plank. Shoulders over your wrists. Hips in line with the shoulders. Knees can be up or down. Take a deep, full breath. And then exhale, bend your elbows back, lower all the way to your belly. Come onto the floor. Release the tops of your feet. Roll your shoulders away from the mat. Lift the front of the chest. And then exhale, release. Tuck your toes, press all the way up and back. Downward facing dog. A couple of big, deep breaths there, in and out. And very slowly, we're going to take little steps, a long, slow walk up to the front of the mat in a forward fold. Feel free to pause any step of the way or bend your knees as much as you need to. If you want to bring your hands onto blocks or come up onto your fingertips, that's going to help open your legs more. That's a pro move. When you get into your forward fold, if you've got blocks or a little stool or a chair or the edge of a couch, bring your hands, forearms, or elbows onto it, kind of depending on what you got. Soften your knees and let your head hang. Let your upper body release into the blocks. And see if you can shift around a little bit. So knees stay soft. Just getting used to being here. On your next breath in, come up onto your fingertips, wherever they are. Blocks, floor, chair, wall. Reach your head away from your hips. Hug your shoulders together. Draw your low belly up. Think about that tabletop we were just in. And then exhale, hinge at your hips, soften your knees, fold back down. Couple more just like that. With your breath in, hug, extend, and lift. And with your breath out, fold back down. Keep going, one or two more. Warm up the muscles in your back and your legs. Warm up your breath. And then the next time you, from your forward fold, bring your hands on your hips, press into your feet, stand all the way up, and come into Tadasana. Bring your heels under your hips so that you're standing like right over your foundation. Breathe deep. We're going to do one more round here. These are sun salute A's. Many of you are familiar with these. If you're not, don't worry if you kind of forget what you're doing or you have to look or it takes you an extra step. It's not about doing it right. It's about connecting to you. So as you're ready, inhale, big breath up. And exhale, forward fold. Hinge at your hips. Come all the way down. Deep breath in. Lift and extend. Press your fingertips into something so you can hug your shoulder blades. Exhale, forward fold. Bring your hands to the mat. Step back to downward facing dog. Take just a couple of breaths there. Give yourself a moment to connect. Inhale, shift forward. Come into plank. Exhale, bend your elbows back, lower all the way to your belly. When you get there, release your feet, press into the tops of the legs, roll your shoulders back, a little cobra. And then exhale, release. Tuck your toes, lift your hips, press up and back. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Couple of breaths. See if you can get your spine a little longer. That might mean bending your knees. That's okay. And then nice and slow, take many steps forward all the way up to the front edge of your mat. Come into a forward fold. When you get there, shake out your head a little bit, soften your knees and arms, your neck. On your next breath in, extend out long, press your fingertips into the floor or the blocks, hug your shoulders, lift your belly. Big breath out, fold back down. Press into your feet, stand all the way up, lift your arms, and then exhale. Arms come down alongside your body. Tadasana, mountain pose, back to neutral. Deep, full breath. What is there to notice here? Reminder that just the act of noticing is going to connect you to yourself. What you notice is going to change all the time. So there's no need to get stuck on it. Or just cloud watching, Is that a word, cloud watching? Cloud gazing, sky gazing? I don't know, guys. And then release that, shake it out a little bit. Maybe grab some water. That's what I want to do. We're going to stretch our wrists and arms. So come down seated. If you want to grab a block or a bolster and put it under your hips, that I'm going to. Work smarter, not harder. All right. So hopefully just a couple of rounds of that warmed you up. And as a matter of fact, this is the purpose of these vinyasas, of these Surya Namaskara A, Sun Salute A, is that we are warming up our bodies so that we can better connect to ourselves and then do yoga. It's a doorway. It's always how I think about it. So one of the reasons that we still do them is that they work really well. As a matter of fact, in that first little sequence of movements that if you've practiced vinyasa style yoga before, you're very familiar with, and even if you didn't know you were practicing vinyasa style yoga, You probably recognize that. It works. Your body gets to extend, it gets to flex, your muscles get to power up and lengthen. So go ahead, bring your right wrist forward. We're just going to stretch the back of your forearm here while I keep talking a little bit. And then go the other way. So, I think that one of the things that Westerners did, switch when you're ready, was they took that and ran with it. They were like, this is yoga now. Um, and I'm grateful for that only because that's how I found my spiritual yoga practice was through yoga at the gym. Um, it got me there. It was also a doorway. So I don't want to knock like I don't want to knock something that works for people in a way, but I also want to remind you that, like, at least the way I teach, it's more than just poses, the way I practice and where yoga comes from. The spiritual practice is first. So when we think about this vinyasa, we don't want to be jacking ourselves up more by doing it, which is what happens to people. Their shoulders, their wrists. Here, we're going to take a little outer arm stretch. Bring one arm across, reach up with your other forearm. We want it to give us a better connection to our bodies. And that's where I think the misunderstanding comes into play, is that people think that the speed, the push up, the press up into the Cobra, that there's something that's going to happen when they do that enough times. And really, it's just a warm up. It is a way to shake the etch-a-sketch, I like to say. And there's lots of ways to take vinyasa that aren't what we just did. And we'll talk about that a little more later, too. Okay, just a couple of times we're going to roll our shoulders around like this and then go the other way. Okay. Bring your right fingertips to the floor, bring your left arm up, just tip to the side. We'll get a little lateral flexion while we're here. And then we'll come up and over the other way. Oh. Okay, and then come back through center. So, come up onto your knees, interlace your fingers behind your back, and then we're going to swim the shoulders behind us. Roll the heads of your arm bones up and back. Hug your hands together, hug your forearms together. And from here, root down into your legs. So if you want to tuck your toes under to do that better, just make sure if your feet are flat that they're straight back and pressing. Draw your low belly in and see if your upper back can curl a little bit. So if it's just your middle and low back, it's only going to cause more pressure and it's actually not going to do a back bend. A back bend initiates from the bottom tips of the shoulder blades in the thoracic spine up into the cervical spine. Because your lumbar spine already has a curve, we don't want that to be the first place to go because it doesn't initiate what's called a chain of command in the back correctly. Take five. I try not to use words like correct, wrong, right, even good and bad. I know I slip up, I'm a person, but when I talk about correct chain of command, what I mean is anatomical reality, which is a phrase I learned from my teacher, Judith Lassiter. We want to be aligned with anatomical reality. If you have an injured quadricep, if we ignore that, we are out of alignment with anatomical reality, which means we are going to have an infinitely harder, if not near impossible time connecting and aligning with us on a spiritual level. When we acknowledge the injury and work with it, we are better aligned to ourselves, right? So when we talk about chain of command in the body, there are just anatomical things that do their job better when the order of operations is online. So when you do things, a certain way, all of it does it better. Backbending is one of them. When we initiate backbending from the upper back, As a matter of fact, the low back gets a deeper back bend because it's almost like a roller coaster car, if you imagine that, like pulling the last car. If the last car was pushing, you'd get like a bumper, you'd be on bumper cars. Oh, I'm so corny. Anyways, bring your hands back behind you again. I really thought this was going to be less talking and more doing, but here we are. If I'm just initiating in the low back, I'm getting bumper cars. I want roller coaster. I like that one. TM. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure someone else has said it before. I like to listen to smart people. Okay, so if we're going to initiate from the upper back, shoulders are going to roll up, back, and down. One of my teachers, Christina Sell, does this the best in the world. She has a YouTube channel you should go look at. I try not to use words like best, but I kind of like to use that word for Christina. So if you, as you curl your shoulders, try to root through your lower half of your body. That's going to counteract the natural curve, and it's going to lift to give you more space in the upper back. That's the magic of this like chain of command, is that it really works in all directions. As you lean back, keep your chin a little tucked so that you're not cramming the back of your neck. Lift. Maybe your knuckles come down towards the floor a little more, and then come on up and release your arms. Shake it out a little bit. That's good. You can do whatever you want with your arms. Mine just wanted to do this. So I bring this up because we're going to talk about Cobra next. Cobra is a back bend. I know that sounds obvious, but you would be shocked on all the bodies I've seen over the years that like never do a back bending Cobra until you're like, hey, try this. And they're like, I feel like it happened for me when I was a new yoga student too. Okay, so if I'm pretending that I'm like in down dog here, bear with me. So I'm from down dog, I come into plank. When we lower from plank, it's a tricep push-up, not a bicep push-up. And the reason being is that we're moving towards a back bend is like the first reason. Second reason is I think there's a lot of reasons. I can't get off on that tangent right now. We're just doing tricep push-ups. Hug the elbows in. So as I lower, my body has this tendency, yours might too. My body is like back bend. And actually, we want to resist that urge in plank because it's going to knock off the chain of command order of operations. So what we want to do is hug the elbows in, draw the low belly in, hug the shoulder blades together. So instead of the back moving, think about your shoulder blades moving and your body lowering slow. When you land on your belly, you want to land with the heads of your arm bones already lifting and your shoulder blades engaging on the back. A lot of people, when they lower like this. Maybe this is familiar for you. The butt goes up, the chest comes down. I'm not in a back bend. I'm doing that low back led bumper car thing. So we really want to focus, and actually this is really hard to do just like this, on keeping everything neutral, hugging the shoulder blades. So when we lower and land, we're like already in steps for low cobra. Now I'm going to show you on my wrists. I wanted to give them a break because we're going to do this a couple times. Move my little blocks. All right. So from down dog, just take a moment. Shake it. Shake it out. Squawk it out if you need to. Excuse me. In down dog, think Tadasana. If your back is rounding, see if you can bend your knees and give the back a little more hammock. If your back is collapsing, see if you can push your hips higher in the air and your heels closer to the floor. From here, we come forward to plank. So in plank, we want Tadasana. We don't want to round the back. We don't want to collapse the back. We want hips and shoulders lined up. We want low belly lifting. If the knees are down, they're not in tabletop. Like that immediately takes pressure. It like changes the pose. We really want the knees to be right below where they are in plank. And we want from the knees to the shoulders to stay lined up. So either way, it's hard. You're good. When I lower, I'm gonna do it good this time. So good. I'm gonna oof. Sorry, I like talked too long. I'm sorry if you were there too. Shake it out a little bit. That's hard. Like that's all coming forward from down dog to plank should be challenging when you're doing it to align yourself better. When you're doing it just to do it, it's so easy for your brain and body to check out. So just if the purpose of vinyasa is what comes in sequence, it's the next best thing. It's supposed to connect us to ourselves. And if it doesn't, maybe there's just another option that's better, right? So this time we'll do it a little quicker. From down dog, shift forward into plank. This time, bend your elbows. Try to hug the shoulder blades together. Keep your body all in one piece so that when you land, your shoulders are moving behind your rib cage. We're going to take a second here and move a little bit side to side. Roll your shoulders a little bit. So from here, check out where your hands are. You want them to be lined up actually closer to your low ribs than under your shoulders. Look at this. If my hands are too far forward, I'm out of a back bend from the beginning. If my hands are too far back, I don't have enough lever to push up. So you kind of want to go in the middle. You want to hug your elbows together. And then from here, reach your tailbone back ever so slightly and soften your butt. Notice if it was clenching. That's the low back trying to lead the train car. Tell it to back off. Try to soften that lower half of the body. Then roll your shoulders back, hug your elbows in, curl up just enough so that you can do it all again. So soften a little bit, press into the tops of your legs, hug your elbows, press your head back. Try not to jut your chin forward. Keep your sides of your neck long. And then exhale, release. Whew. Stack your palms, let your forehead rest. Maybe slosh your hips around a little bit. Okay. So that should have been hard, just like that, you know. From there, pressing up and back, you can use your knees to get there. You can just press straight up through the low push-up, and we come back to down dog. I'm now going to demonstrate what I see people do a lot that at its most innocent isn't doing a good back bend or isn't doing an effective back bend. See, I just said I try not to use those binary like words, and then like 8 of them came out at once. It's not doing an effective back bend, and it most harmful, it can lead to rotator cuff injury because like your shoulder girdle is super complicated and very sensitive, and this style of yoga can really put too much pressure on it when you don't have the like framework for why we do it and how to do it more effectively. So, that being said, don't do this. I repeat, this is a via negativa example. So from down dog, I come forward to plank. And then this is what I see people do, is they bend their elbows, their butt goes up, and then they come here, and then they come here. And I don't know if you can see this, but like I'm not doing a back bend. My shoulders are going in, my low back is crunching, and my upper back is rounding behind me, which is actually more like flexion. It's more like forward fold. And we just want a back bend. That's all. It's not a finger wag. It's like, this is the back bend. Don't not do one unless there's reasons you don't do back bends, in which case you're good. You know what you're talking about. If you're looking for the back bend, this is it. The forward fold comes other places. So we just want to be really clear about our intention so that we can unkink that hose and have like a more aligned experience. Your spine will like it, your brain will like it, your nervous system will like it. I can't guarantee you will like it. But anyways, um, I think one of the ways to kind of work away from that is making sure that your stance is long enough in downward facing dog. A lot of people think that the point of down dog is to get their heels to the floor like this. And so they'll step forward too close and their back will round like this. If we're looking for more Tadasana in every pose, we're going to want to have a little bit of a longer step. And you know what? Your heels never have to come to the floor in down dog for it to give you a lot of benefit. The way I like to check if I'm in a long enough down dog is by coming forward to plank. So when you're in plank, you want, here, I'm going to bring my knees down for a sec, the creases of your wrists. So where, like that little fold of skin where your palm meets your forearm, if you were to lay like a yardstick across your yoga mat, you would want your wrist creases to be lined up so that they make a straight line, quote unquote, about parallel with the front of your mat. There are exceptions to this because every body is unique. And if you and I were in the same room together, there's like a whole list of factors that I look for when I help people align and adjust their bodies, right? Things I learned in massage therapy school, things I learned working with different anatomy and like PT and yoga teachers and people who work with bodies professionally that are individual. So just a reminder that if you know something about your body that's different than what I'm saying, trust that. This is just YouTube. So in general, people want their wrists to be lined up parallel to the front of the mat. You want your inner elbow hinges, I call these, to be kind of looking at each other, but in a little. So if I have them looking straight at each other, I'm actually internally rotating my shoulders, and we don't want that. We want neutral. So they kind of, if they had laser pointers, they would intersect maybe somewhere out in front of your face when you're looking at the ground, is one way I've heard it described. Doot, doot, doot. And we want the heels of our feet to be stacked over the balls of our feet. So we don't want to be too far forward. We don't want to be like crammed on your toes. I think that's wildly uncomfortable, although some people like it. But we want to be stacked here so that we can get more Tadasana in our spines. Again, knees can be on the floor after you lower there. Keep your hands and feet where they are. Lift your hips and soften your knees. So this down dog might feel too long. Stay with it for a bit. Grip the mat with your knuckles. Bend your knees, reach your chest and shoulders towards the top of your thighs, and then shift forward to plank again. Whew, it should be hard, but it should feel hard in a way that's like more stacked, maybe. From here, we're going to lower down. So bend your elbows, draw your spine in towards itself, reach your chest through your arms, hug your shoulder blades. Oh, and then when you land, release the tops of your feet and check it out. Your shoulders might already be lifting up off the floor. Congratulations, you are in a back bend. If they didn't, just roll them up and back. Ta-da! So from here, this is low cobra. Low cobra is when we keep the low ribs, that's how I kind of remember, on the floor, and we get the upper back to initiate the back bend. The elbows stay bent. I think that is a dank back bend, if I do say so myself. I don't think you have to think about lifting up to get deep. As a matter of fact, the The lower the lever of your arm, the more space you'll have to work with in your back. So if you come back into this low cobra, keep your chin a little tucked, wiggle your shoulders a little, kind of get yourself in there, and then hug the elbows together. Reach the top of your head away from your tailbone, and instead of thinking about getting lift, think about getting length in your spine. Don't forget to breathe. Hug your elbows together. Keep pressing into the tops of your knees, the tops of your feet. And then from here, keep everything the same. Press the back of your head ever so slightly back so that it's in line with your shoulders. Hug your elbows in, and then press into your hands and lift up only as high as you can go without your shoulders collapsing forward. So when that starts to happen, lower the chest again. Whew, and take a break. I know I needed one. Let your forehead rest on your fists or your hands. Maybe slash the hips a little. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and for something that gets like thrown around, like, okay, vinyasa, okay, sane, okay, chaturanga, like, okay, like up dog, these things get like, I don't know, I think sometimes it's interesting how we do a disservice to our own experience of it by like rushing through it or acting as though they're not their own poses. And that I get a lot of benefit out of just working with this warm-up sequence in a more zoomed in way in my own body. So, coming up into Cobra from low Cobra, we just kind of did it. The thing you want to think about is that the very top back of your head here and your cervical spine is like the front car on the roller coaster. We don't want to cram it, right? We don't want to crash the roller coaster. We want to keep enough space between each car, if you think about your vertebrae like that. Roll the shoulders back, lift up. Then from here, we're pressing the head and shoulders back, melt the heart a little bit. That might lower you a little, but you might feel a deeper engagement. Reach your tailbone back a little, soften your butt, hug your low belly in and up, hug your elbows in, lift a little more. Then press into your hands. Try to straighten your arms and see what happens. If your shoulders come forward, it just means that your shoulders weren't open enough to go that high. That's okay. You can lower down. Keep your elbows a little bent. Reach your chest forward. Think about length. Push into your knuckles of your hands. Maybe curl back. Whoo, and then lower down. And release. Whew. So that's a Cobra. Up dog is like its own thing. I don't think I'm going to talk about it today. But chaturanga and up dog are like their own workshop. You can go ahead and press up and back. Just sit back on your heels or find down dog or child's pose for a breath. Whew. You can get a ton of back bend without ever having to put, like to push or to, put too much pressure on your wrists or in your low back, which are, two areas I think that take a lot of, they take a lot in our practice, in our hatha yoga practice. So, from there, these vinyasas, get offered as a way of figuring out where you are again. So if you don't even know where you are when you're doing them, how are they going to do that? It's worth spending this time with yourself in this way to sort of deconstruct this sequence so that it can better serve you. So for example, if you have wrist stuff or you're still building strength to lower down from a push-up position, I think it is equally challenging to come forward to plank, lower your knees, draw your low belly up, and then hug your elbows, reach your chest through your arms, keep your spine long, and then land in this very similar familiar low cobra. You can come up as high or as low as you want, and then you can press back up, which is going to build a lot of strength. It's a good one. And then you can tuck and lift back. You can do this with your knees on the floor the whole time. So from down dog, you could have down dog be more like puppy pose. You can come forward and up. I kind of had my hands out far there, so I walked them back. I'm going to lower down. I'm going to lift my chest, and then I'm going to come back the way I came and come into puppy again. So you never have to cram yourself in to fit these, because they work well, because these are the actions bodies do. There's a lot more I could say about these. There's a lot more we could practice and do, and exercises we could explore. But I want to encourage you that when a vinyasa is offered, whether it's in a power vinyasa class or in one of my videos, or you're just on your mat by yourself, that this idea of what comes in sequence for us, what's going to flow, what's going to connect us in our bodies, in our practice, on our yoga mats, is up to what is happening in our bodies on our yoga mats. I can't tell you the best way to connect to yourself, but I can offer you the assurance that I didn't make this up. Thank God. This system was handed down, was offered to the world as a means of connecting back to ourselves physically, as a doorway to connect to ourselves spiritually. So the reason we still do these is because they still work, and they're adaptable because bodies are adaptable, people are adaptable. And if you have any questions about this or how to adapt something for you, feel free to drop me a line. I just realized that our YouTube videos have comments that I haven't been responding to because I'm a space cadet sometimes. So I'm going to try to be better about that. You can always find me on the internet and shoot me a message. And I hope that you got a little sweaty in the body and in the brain, and that you feel like you have a little more access to what's going on when we move through a vinyasa. Hope wherever you are, you have a great day, and I'll see you on the mat soon.